Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about combining two exercises together because people ask me that, because I tell people often if you want to fully develop a muscle, the best exercise is to pick two really good exercises for a muscle, right? If you pick two really good exercises for a muscle and combine them together appropriately, that is the best exercise for a muscle. And today I'm going to chat with you guys a little bit about delts and really just shoulders in general, because this combination will build all three heads of the delts and it will build the upper traps. Now, this is also assuming, of course, that you're doing a more balanced program. You're doing a balanced program, because if you're doing a lot of rowing and pull-ups and other things, you are getting a fair amount of posterior deltoid work, right? You're getting a fair amount of it. If you're doing any significant amount of pressing, and we would assume you are, then you're getting a fair amount of interior deltoid work. Now, I'm not saying that this will give you maximum development in those heads. I'm saying that you're going to get decent development in those heads. The upper traps, of course, and the side delts will be a bit more neglected if that is all you're doing. But you could still build a base that way, and I absolutely have clients who have pretty good sized shoulders who that is what they do. We don't do any shoulder work. We don't do any overhead pressing. We don't do any laterals. We don't do any, high pulls or upright rows or anything, and they still have good sized shoulders. But those people are genetically blessed in that area. When you have lifters, particularly drug-free lifters who are not, it can be a very, very difficult area for people to develop. And we're not just talking about from an aesthetic perspective, because that's not what I cover. We're talking even about it from a performance perspective. But if we want to be honest here, outside of your genetics, the only real things that you're going to be able to do to enhance that look, at least clean, that look that people oftentimes chase, which I don't care about, but you might care about it, is to get to a pretty low body fat, to get quite lean, and to build up your entire delt. Big round delts and big traps give that kind of that Hollywood look that people want. So these sort of exercises kind of do add a finishing touch there. So let's talk about them. And the thing that we get here is that the snatch grip high pull gives you what we would call an eccentric overload. What do we mean? Because you're technically using a leg drive to drive the weight up. You're basically doing a wide grip upright row to a safer position. Again, you're not coming above the upper chest, right? People ask about these movements, are these dangerous? It's like, no, if you lean forward correctly, you turn your elbows out, right? You rotate your elbows outward at the bottom, and you do not take it up too high. Neither the snatch grip high pull or the upright row are dangerous for your shoulders. They're not dangerous for them. When you go too high, you go with too narrow of a grip, maybe you lean back. But with the snatch grip high pull, you're going to have some forward lean to get that hip drive, right? Because you're going to use some hip extension to get that weight moving. You're cheating it up, then you're basically catching it up near the top. You're still using those muscles to move it. They're just getting given a lot of assistance. And you are then having to catch the weight on the way back down. It is eccentric overload. And you'll hear lifters talk about eccentrics. Well, there's studies showing that eccentrics can produce large amounts of hypertrophy. That doesn't mean that slow eccentrics do. That's one of these big, goofy, silly-ass bodybuilder myths out there. That's not what the research says. Slow eccentrics don't build muscle. They don't help you in any way, right? A 4-second eccentric doesn't build any more muscle than a 1-second eccentric. And a 6-second actually builds less, right? They don't do anything. They're not helpful. What they mean is eccentric overload, a weight heavier than your 1 rep max, having to try to lower it. And you're not going to be able to lower it slow. You can't do it, right? If your 1 rep max bench press is 200 pounds and they put 210 on the bar and just release it on you, you're not going to be able to lower it for 4 seconds. It's not going to happen. It's going to come down in about 1 second, just like the snatch grip high pull, right? It's dropping pretty quick, but you are having to catch it because it's not hitting the floor. And it puts a stretch overload, and it puts an eccentric rep on your entire shoulder structure. All three heads of the delt with a good, strong focus on the posterior and the side delts. particularly the side delts and in that upper trap. It hits them very hard, especially because of that forward lean, makes it a little more posterior dominant, which is probably a lagging area for you. Right? And by the way, notice I use straps on these. You're going to have to use straps. You're not going to get to any respectable weight on these doing a normal grip for rep work. Even if you're like, well, I could hook grip it, you don't want to do that for 10 reps. Especially you start getting heavy on it. Start getting above 200 pounds doing sets of 10 with that grip, it's going to start hurting. Just strap up. Right? You could do like 3 sets of 10 on these. That's what I do mostly. Right, so then you've really hit a big multi-joint movement that has an explosive component and a large eccentric overload that has hit your entire shoulder girdle. Hit the entire shoulder girdle, right? You combine that with something like a simple lateral raise. It can be with a dumbbell, it could be with a cable. The thing is, laterals also can hurt your shoulders if you go too high. It can crush your glenoid, but if you keep them fairly low, if we keep them fairly low, because what happens is you start getting really high on that lateral, you're just using the front delt more. You're also putting stress on the glenoid in your shoulder, which can get damaged, and it's one of the lifts that can cause shoulder problems. If you keep it fairly low and just at your normal natural range of motion, it puts most of the emphasis on the side delt and the upper trap. Right? You can turn your pinkies up just a little bit. You don't exaggerate it, by the way. Don't exaggerate it. You don't try to get them over to the point where it's uncomfortable. That will also injure you. You can just try to turn them up just a hair. Lean forward. That combination, again, if we want to make sure that we're hitting the side delt, preferentially, upper trap with some rear delt, and again, it's still working the front delt too. You lean forward a bit. You don't go real high. Try not to use a lot of momentum. If you use a little bit, it's not the end of the world. But it's that going really high where guys think that they need to be all the way up at 90 degrees across or 180 degrees across from each other. It's not necessary to get the muscle recruitment that you want. Puts more stress on the shoulder joint. Right? If you just lean forward a bit and stop at that comfortable range of motion for the shoulder joint, it's easy on the shoulder. Very little stress on the joint or the rotator cuffs. Again, puts a heavy focus on the side delt upper trap. That area that is probably lagging for most of you. All right, this combination, these two lifts together, just like I say all the time, picking 2 really good lifts to use together. They could be big multi-joint movements, or it could be a multi-joint and a single joint. In this case, it's a single joint added. Can give you phenomenal development in a muscle. Again, if volume is appropriate. Right? Because what's our ideal volume? 10 to 20 sets per week per muscle group. Right? You could do 3 sets of each of these twice a week. Done 12 sets. It's right in that ideal zone. Easy. Try to progress on them as you're able. Done. Easy combination. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.